People have always believed that in a wealthy, powerful family, the one who's favored the most, the one who gives birth to the son who carries on the family line, is the one who ends up holding the entire fortune. The first wife had legitimacy. The fourth wife gave birth to a precious son. Everyone was certain that the 500 billion Hong Kong dollar fortune would fall into the hands of one of those two women. And yet, when Macau casino king Stanley Ho closed his eyes for the last time, the person who walked away with most of the estate was the second wife, the woman who'd spent 30 years quietly hiding on the sidelines, the one the whole world thought was the most harmless of all. So how did a woman everyone believed to be foolish turn the entire game upside down? How tangled is the family we're breaking down today? Just hearing the names is enough to make your head spin. Macau's #1 beauty, Lucina Lam, so stunning she captivated an entire region. Lucina Lam, the daughter of a military family that had fallen from grace. Ina Chan, the gentle nurse. And then Angela Leong, a woman from an ordinary background. All of them were gathered under one roof by Stanley Ho himself, becoming recognized wives within the upper circles of Hong Kong and Macau high society. But let me say this first. To understand this story, don't rush to judge it through today's eyes. In the world of elite families in the first half of the 20th century, a tycoon having multiple wives wasn't always just a matter of romance. It was almost a way of arranging power and building family alliances. Each wife often represented a different kind of resource. One carried prestigious bloodlines. Another brought with her an entire underground network of influence. And that is exactly what makes this story so worth telling. On that chessboard, almost everyone placed their bets on the first wife and the fourth wife. You'll understand why in a moment. And yet the one who had the last laugh was the second wife. The woman everyone looked down on. A former dance girl who once had to work behind a counter at the age of 14. The question is, with what move did she turn 30 years of silence into an absolute victory? Now, sit back, pour yourself a cup of coffee, and let me tell the story from the beginning. From the day a fallen young heir met the woman who'd change his entire life. In his youth, Stanley Ho was a fallen rich kid from a declining family. Yes, his roots traced back to Ho Si Man, the head of one of the 4 great families during the Hong Kong government era, and he'd once been pampered to the fullest. But unfortunately, he was only one of Ho Si Kwang's 13 children, and the clan paid him little attention. Even so, being born into a family with deep connections to Hong Kong's richest people and political circles meant that one way or another, his life hadn't yet fallen into true misery. After being pushed to the margins for too long, the young Stanley Ho lost any desire to strive for anything. He only wanted to drift through life. He studied at Queen's College, the best school in Hong Kong, but he barely bothered to try, spending his days hanging around and indulging with a bad crowd. Then fate's slap landed during his high school years. His father's business failed, and the family went bankrupt. In an instant, the young heir who'd once been praised and admired fell into becoming someone no one cared to look at anymore. For a person with such enormous pride, how could he possibly swallow the humiliation of being cast aside by the world? So, bitter and enraged, he fought back. He threw himself into his studies and was admitted to the University of Hong Kong. But don't be too quick to think the future casino king suddenly transformed into an outstanding student. No. The real turning point came in December 1941, when he relied on his language skills, dropped out of school, and slipped into a job as a secretary at Luen Cheong, a company owned by one of his brothers-in-law. As fate would have it, it was there that he met Lucina Lam, and fell hopelessly in love at first sight. And who exactly was Lucina Lam? She came from a distinguished Portuguese family, with a background that was unquestionably powerful. Her grandfather worked at the Macau notary office. Her father was a well-known lawyer, and her friends were all members of high society. With half Portuguese blood, she carried both the classic elegance of an Asian beauty and the alluring charm of the West. Her title as the #1 beauty of the region didn't come out of nowhere. To put it plainly, This marriage later turned out to be Stanley Ho marrying far above his station. To catch the beauty's eye, every time he got off work, he'd find a way to appear in front of her and win her over, sometimes picking her up after school, sometimes inviting her out to eat or to watch movies during the holidays. When he ran out of excuses, he used learning Portuguese as a reason to cling to her again and again. Faced with that relentless pursuit, the lively young lady finally softened. In just 3 short months, the two walked into the wedding hall together. But Portuguese marriage law had always required monogamy. On their wedding day, Stanley Ho solemnly swore that in this lifetime, there'd only be Lucina Laam. The 16-year-old girl, drowning in the dream of love, believed him completely. Poor thing. She had no idea her husband was playing word games with her. Monogamy under Portuguese law, yes. But the Chinese custom of taking concubines was still very much alive. To me, this was the cruelest irony of Macau in that era, a place where 2 legal systems and 2 cultures overlapped. A clever man could stand between those 2 sets of rules and choose whichever one benefited him most. And Stanley Ho, honestly, was a master at standing on that line. The tragedy was that the concubine he later brought home would not only steal away his love, but also turn Clementina's entire life upside down. In 1942, just as Stanley Ho married the beauty, he also seized hold of his wife's entire political and commercial network. After the wedding, Lucina Laam's father devoted himself to grooming his son-in-law, bringing him along wherever he went, and opening countless doors for him. Stanley Ho himself was also very good at seizing opportunity. He used those connections to secure a series of business privileges in Hong Kong and Macau, earning millions of Hong Kong dollars in profit in just 1 year, naturally becoming the brightest rising millionaire star. Meanwhile, at home, his gentle wife was also spinning like a top. In the 7 years after their marriage, she gave birth first to their eldest daughter, Jane Ho, and then to their eldest son, Robert Ho. With a son to carry on the family line, Stanley was overjoyed and became even more driven in business. Family and career, both complete. What more could anyone ask for? But that picture of happiness shattered in 1957, the 15th year of their marriage. Lucina Laam was suddenly struck by colitis, and her health went into a steep decline. At only 33 years old, she had to have part of her stomach removed, and from then on, she could only eat liquid foods day after day. From that point forward, she was almost no longer able to do anything at all. People say, after a long illness, even filial devotion fades at the bedside. And with husband and wife, that saying is even more true. In the beginning, Stanley Ho still respected the bond between them. He put in the effort to seek treatment for her and brought in famous doctors from all over. Even though none of it could save the situation, he could still be called considerate. After work, he'd even stop by her hospital room to play cards and talk with his wife. But what mask can be worn forever without peeling away? He was a man in the prime of his life, with a career soaring like a kite in the wind. What he craved was someone who could stand beside him in the world of social dealings, not a wife who spent year after year confined to a sickbed. So when he met Lucina Lam at a dance hall and became completely infatuated with that 14-year-old girl, it wasn't exactly surprising. Even now, many people still find this pairing hard to believe. Lucina Lam was beautiful, yes. She could dance, yes. But Stanley Ho was already 36 at the time, with a wife, children, and a solid career. Meanwhile, the girl was only a teenage girl working behind the counter at a dance hall, just 14 years old and still so young. Why would a man like him be willing to confront his wife's entire family just to bring home an ordinary dance girl? Behind it were 2 reasons, and both were very Stanley Ho. The first reason. Lucina Lam's family background was far from ordinary. It was true that by then she'd fallen so low that she had to fight for a living among women of the nightlife world. But if you looked back just a few years, the Lam family wasn't necessarily beneath the Ho family. For 2 generations, her father and grandfather had both come from military backgrounds. Her father had once been trained at Whampoa Military Academy, had studied alongside Major General Guo Jun, Peng Bisheng, and even Zhou Lang, the Kuomintang army commander who was captured during the Huai Hai campaign. To put it plainly, She was a true daughter of a military family. And that wasn't all. The Lam family had also prospered in the silk business and maintained deep, firmly rooted ties with the major gangs in Hong Kong. Growing up in that kind of environment, she lacked none of the things high society valued: literature, etiquette, music, singing, and dance. It was precisely that foundation that later allowed her to move through social circles as effortlessly as a fish in water. What she shared with Stanley Ho was this: the glory of the Lam family had also vanished like smoke when her father went bankrupt. Her parents had no choice but to move from their villa in Lai Chi Kok back to the countryside of Tai Po, tightening their belts to survive. The carefree young lady she once had been was forced to strip away her elegance and enter the most famous dance hall in Macau as a dance girl. Did you think she went there only to cling to rich men and hunt for a wealthy husband? Then you've seriously underestimated Lucina Laam's ambition. Her family may have fallen, but that underworld network was still intact. All it needed was a stream of money to come back to life. And the man who had both plenty of money and a desperate need for gang support was none other than Stanley Ho. It turned out that the future tycoon was, at that time, eyeing his way into Macau's gambling industry. But the old hands in the business were pressing him down so hard he could barely breathe, and no matter what he did, he couldn't stir even a ripple. Gradually, he came to understand. If he wanted to stand firm in this world, ability and money alone weren't enough. He needed people from the gangs to escort him. And that need matched, down to the smallest detail, exactly what the Lam family still had. And so, from one sweet invitation to dance by Lucina Lam, this destined bond, or more accurately, this partnership, officially began. The second reason was softer, touched with a faint trace of emotion. Both of them were descendants of once prominent families that had fallen from grace. Both were pitiful people who'd been thrown off their horses. Even though Stanley Ho had been lifted by his wife's family into becoming a rising star in the business world, he still felt inferior before Clementina Laam. And outside, people were still whispering about him as a man living off his wife's family. So finding a sense of superiority with a fallen Lucina Lam was, in that sense, all too predictable. In 1957, he used the loophole that Hong Kong and Macau at the time hadn't yet abolished the laws and customs of the Qing dynasty, forcing the Laam family to nod in agreement and allow him to take Lucina Lam as a concubine. When Clementina Laam, who was lying bedridden, heard the news, she fainted from fury. She couldn't understand it at all. On their wedding day, he'd sworn eternal faithfulness and devotion, so how could those vows turn to smoke the moment she fell ill? When the elders of the Laam family heard about it, their faces went pale with rage. They pressed him, asking how he dared humiliate his first wife like that. The reason he gave was blunt. After all, he was still a normal man. Was he supposed to live like a monk for the rest of his life? And besides, when drinking and discussing business, he needed a beautiful woman by his side to entertain guests. The elders were left speechless. Thinking it over, ever since their daughter had fallen ill, it was true that she could no longer fulfill the duties of a wife. And so, with bitterness in their hearts, they had no choice but to swallow their anger and agree. For nearly the next 20 years, in the eyes of the world, Lucina Lam was Stanley Ho's perfectly matched life partner. In the business world, one would lead and the other would follow, their talents nearly equal. On the dance floor, every step aligned, every glance filled with affection. They were so perfectly in sync that people gave them the title of the Emperor and Empress of the dance floor. But life wasn't that rosy. No matter how openly they displayed their love, Lucina Lam's status as a concubine was still completely rejected by the elders of the Ho family. Even in 1962, when her first daughter Pansy Ho was born, the little girl wasn't even allowed to call Stanley Ho father in public. That kind of life, not daring to openly acknowledge her own family, how could someone as fiercely competitive as Lucina Lam ever swallow it? And so, a plan that would quietly stretch across 30 years began. As for Clementina Laam, the short decade from 1972 to 1981 was the decade in which fate shattered her life. In 1973, she was in a car accident in Portugal and suffered a severe brain injury that wiped away all her memories. In 1981, the greatest pride of her life, her son, Robert Ho, and his wife, Suki Potier, after having dinner with his father, were on their way home when they were caught in a horrific car crash and died on Portuguese soil at only 33 years old. Her eldest daughter, Jane Ho, an iron-willed woman who'd once dominated the business world, completely broke down when she heard the news of her younger brother's death and was sent by her father to a nursing facility in Hong Kong. So while all that tragedy was crashing down, what was Stanley Ho, the husband, the father, doing? In 1972, he brought Lucina Lam through the doors of the Ho family in full view of everyone, officially legitimizing her status. In 1973, he purchased the villa at number 25 in Jardines Lookout Valley for 1.75 million Hong Kong dollars and generously gave it to Lucina Lam as thanks for all the years she'd stood by his side. Even right after his eldest son passed away, in order to preserve the gang connections behind the Lam family at all costs, he firmly refused to allow a thorough investigation into the accident. This detail alone is enough to expose one truth. To Stanley Ho, family affection, or human life, would always weigh less than the numbers on the balance sheet. To be fair, this is also a detail that many people have repeated, but there's never been an official conclusion, so I'll leave it open. Even so, looking at the way he steered an entire casino empire while surrounded by underground forces, it's not hard to imagine him placing the survival of his business above everything else. And that was something Lucina Lam understood better than anyone. That was why, in 1985, when he fell for Clementina Leighton's own nurse, Ina Chan, gifted her a villa worth 8 million Hong Kong dollars and openly lived with her in the Tai Tam area, Lucina Lam didn't even blink. And it was strange too. Ina Chan was 32 years younger than him, but by then, she was already over 30. To say her beauty had completely captivated the casino king was hard to believe. The Hong Kong-Macau media at the time analyzed that this union happened because Clementina Leighton had quietly given her approval, since Ina had served her for 3 full years. But then things came to light. Ina Chan's older sister had once been an unofficial daughter-in-law of the casino king, and Ina herself had tangled connections with Lucina Lam. At this point, everyone understood. This third wife was very likely the pair of eyes Lucina Lam had planted beside her husband. I want to emphasize the words "very likely," because this was an inference drawn by the media, not a confirmed fact. But if it was true, then it has to be said. Lucina Lam was playing chess on an entirely different level. While most wives would have thrown themselves into direct jealousy and confrontation, she chose to control information from the inside. That was the mindset of a major business player, not simply that of a wounded wife. No wonder that when the other couple dated openly, the second wife remained perfectly calm, as if nothing had happened. And honestly, someone as soft as Ina Chan, placed beside the later fourth wife, Angela Leong, was hardly dangerous at all, like a mosquito standing next to a tiger. In 1986, though Stanley Ho was already older, his charm hadn't faded. During a private dance gathering, he fell in love with 26-year-old dance instructor Angela Leong, then insisted on marrying her. What's worth noting is that by the 1980s, Hong Kong and Macau had long since abolished the concubine system. Aside from Lucina Lam, whom he'd managed to legitimize as an honored concubine, the fourth wife Angela Leong, and even the third wife Ina Chan, technically had no official status. Even Josie Ho, the youngest daughter of the second wife, once dared to make a cutting remark in front of the camera. What third wife? What fourth wife? They were nothing more than girlfriends my father kept outside. In traditional East Asian culture, hierarchy has always been sharply defined. As the saying goes, a concubine is not equal to a wife, and a lover is not equal to a concubine. No matter how many children Ina Chan or Angela Leong gave birth to, standing before the first wife and second wife, they were still one rank lower. So instead of fighting for the love of an old man, why not pour her energy into building a career, protecting her children and grandchildren and securing the rest of her own life? That was exactly why Lucina Lam dared to walk away to Canada and live quietly for nearly 30 years. But don't mistake that for retreat. Her seclusion was merely the way she gathered strength for the inheritance war that would come later. In the late 1980s, she expanded her business in Canada and moved into the garment industry. Coincidentally, since the 1970s, the older generation of the Lam family had already put down roots there, leaving behind an entire network of connections. In the end, this trip to Canada was also in line with Stanley Ho's unspoken wishes. But did you think she left the Hong Kong-Macau home front empty? That would be a huge mistake. Everyone knew that aside from Shun Tak and the enormous assets of Melco International, Stanley Ho's biggest gold mine was Macau Entertainment, known as STDM, the core that swallowed up super profitable businesses like gambling. And from the very day she helped him step into the casino world, Lucina Lam had already been quietly arranging her forces. In the first step, she borrowed the underworld background of her elder brother, Lam Wah Ying, and pushed him into STDM's finance department. And Stanley Ho nodded immediately, without the slightest hesitation. After feeling his way around for a few years, Lam Wah Ying rose visibly. He climbed to the position of deputy general manager, then stepped into politics, cleaned up his underworld background, and sat as chairman of the Macau Olympic Committee, while also serving as a member of the Guangdong Provincial Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. Throughout the years when the second wife was away from home, her elder brother also helped his sister manage a chain of jewelry and fashion stores, bringing quite a few streams of capital back to life. But no matter how you say it, whether a business succeeds still comes down to people. And when it came to raising her children, Lucina Lam invested tremendously. Because she'd left the swamp of family politics behind, she had more than enough time to guide her children. Ask Pansy Ho, Daisy Ho, Maisie Ho, her youngest son Lawrence Ho, or her youngest daughter Josie Ho about their mother's parenting philosophy, and they'd all give the same two words: strict discipline. Living inside the household of the casino king, she didn't spoil her children in the slightest. On the contrary, she trained them with almost harsh discipline. If any of them let slip even one sentence that smelled of showing off wealth, it was strictly forbidden. Her eldest daughter, Pansy Ho, carried the heaviest expectations of all. So that she'd learn early to shoulder the role of the eldest sister, Lucina used a system of collective punishment. If the younger siblings made a mistake, the older sister took the punishment for them. To me, this was the move that truly changed the entire game. Children from wealthy Hong Kong families often fall into indulgence, wasting away everything their fathers and grandfathers built. Stories like that are everywhere. Lucina Lam understood that money could eventually be divided, but capable children couldn't be split apart by anyone. She didn't raise spoiled young masters and pampered young ladies. She raised successors. Looking back, that was the most profitable investment of her entire life. As for Daisy Ho, during her years studying at the University of Toronto, she even had to wash dishes to cover her own living expenses, so pocket money or luxury brands were completely out of the question. Growing up in that kind of environment, the children from the second wife's side may have suffered more hardship, but once they matured, every one of them turned out capable and successful. Pansy Ho is now firmly in command, sitting as chairwoman of Shun Tak Holdings in Hong Kong. Daisy Ho holds real power in a listed company and is so talented that she was even named by Forbes among the top 32 outstanding women in China. Maisie Ho and Josie Ho may not have been very interested in taking over the family business, but each still found her place in the field she loved. One became honorary chairwoman of a cultural organization, while the other freely pursued a life in the arts, living out her passion. In a way, they got exactly what they wanted. Especially after the eldest son, Robert Ho, died in 1981, Lawrence Ho, the youngest son from the second wife's side, born in 1976, suddenly rose to become the brightest candidate to inherit the next casino throne. He not only personally revived the declining Melco International, but also showed a rare kind of loyalty and love. He stayed devoted to his childhood sweetheart and wife, Sharon Lo, and through his wife's family background, he managed to build connections with names like Chong Yao-kin and Joseph Lau. His road ahead was wide open, his future dazzlingly bright. Compared with the declining first wife's side, the faint and unremarkable third wife's side, and the fourth wife's side that was only good at showing off, Lucina Lam's game was, without question, a sweeping victory. On the afternoon of May 26, 2020, at exactly 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the legend of an entire era, Casino King Stanley Ho, took his final breath in the hospital at the age of 98. Across 98 years in wealth, power, women, children, he'd once held them all in his hands in the most brilliant and glorious way. And yet, in the moment he closed his eyes, everything dissolved like smoke, leaving behind only a few faint, almost uncertain tears from his children and grandchildren. As for Lucina Lam, from an ambitious dance girl in the world of nightlife, she climbed all the way to the top, surrounded by children, with both fame and fortune complete, truly the dream script of a great female lead. But that script was never written by her alone. In it was Stanley Ho's capital, the backing of the Lam family, the unity of her children, and, ironically enough, even the accidental assistance of her own romantic rivals. But the price of those two words, getting what she wanted, was more than 30 years of walking on thin ice, cautious with every step, along with an entire youth she could never demand back. People often look at her as the final winner, but perhaps for her, victory was never a complete feeling. It was simply the only thing left to hold on to after everything else had slipped out of her hands. Compared with the fourth wife, who even now still wears pink doll-like dresses, trying to cling to a trace of youth, Lucina Lam, at 79, had already become an old woman, her beauty faded with time. Even at her husband's funeral, that woman who'd been strong her entire life had to sit in a wheelchair as others pushed her forward. As soon as the funeral ended, she quietly boarded a plane again, leaving the land where she'd struggled for an entire lifetime. And with a departure like that, the day she returns must be very far away. People love to repeat the saying that behind every successful man, there's always a hard-working woman. But today's story shows that real life is far crueler than that. Behind the Casino King were 4 women, and the one who had the last laugh wasn't the one who worked the hardest, or the one who was loved the most, but the one who calculated best. In the end, in that world of elite families, love was never what decided who won and who lost. And what about you? Do you think Lucina Lam won because she was more strategic than everyone else? Or simply because she was lucky enough to outlive all the others? Leave a comment and let me know. And if you think today's story is worth reflecting on, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.